10 years lost in darkness, no one knew how many times he thought about disappearing from this world. Every morning was a battle, every smile a mask. He used to believe he was broken beyond repair, that depression was a life sentence with no way out. But then, in the depths of despair, a small flicker of light appeared, and he chose to take a step forward, even if it was just a tiny one. He used to be full of energy, friendly, cheerful, with dreams and ambitions just like any other young person. But everything started to change in his second year of college, what was supposed to be the best time of his life. There was no major event, no big crisis. And maybe that's what made it scarier, the silence. He began to feel drained, and he didn't know why. The things that used to bring him joy, friends, music, hobbies, suddenly felt meaningless. Every morning, just getting out of bed felt like torture. He started avoiding social gatherings, putting off schoolwork, even stopped replying to messages. His family didn't understand. His friends slowly drifted away. Lazy, not trying hard enough, you have to be strong, even when meant well, those words felt like knives cutting deeper into his mind. He started to believe them. That he really was useless. A burden. And that feeling stuck with him, day after day, year after year. There were nights he'd curl up in bed, feeling like his chest was being crushed. Crying without sound, hopelessness without a name. Sometimes he'd walk out in the middle of the night with no direction, just hoping to disappear. Depression didn't hit like a storm. It crept in like fog, quiet, subtle, but it covered everything. He once thought he'd be stuck there forever. That there was no end. That no one truly understood. And the worst part? He didn't understand himself either. All he knew was, he wasn't really living, just existing. 10 years. Long enough to lose yourself, but maybe just long enough to find your way back if there's a reason. But back then, he didn't have one. Only pain and the dark. In the early years, he didn't try to heal. Honestly, he didn't believe there was anything to heal. Depression had become a part of him, like a shadow stuck to his back, impossible to outrun. He lived like an empty shell. Went to school, went to work, made small talk, just enough for people to think he was fine. But inside, there was nothing but emptiness. Every night, he'd blast music through his headphones just to drown out the screaming inside his own mind. Panic attacks would strike without warning, leaving him terrified of himself. There was a time he turned to alcohol. Not to feel better, but to forget, even for a few hours. There were moments he thought about ending it all. Not because he wanted to die. Just because he was too tired to keep living like this. Then one rainy night, he stopped in the middle of a bridge. Not to jump, but to cry. Cry like a lost child no one was looking for. For the first time in years, he admitted to himself, I need help. That night marked the beginning of his journey, not to chase happiness, but simply to survive. He reached out to a therapist. At first, he was terrified. Afraid of being judged, afraid it wouldn't work, afraid to hope and be let down again. But he went anyway. Those first therapy sessions felt like hell. Digging through painful memories, facing things he'd spent years avoiding. But then, somewhere in those heavy silences, something unexpected happened. He started to feel lighter. Not by much, just a little. But it was enough to keep going. He learned to recognize his emotions, to name his sadness, to forgive himself. Even the smallest things, like cooking a meal, cleaning his room, stepping out onto the balcony to feel the sun, became victories. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. But he had begun to walk away from the darkness he once thought would bury him forever. One therapy session a week. One moment of facing himself each day. And just like that, time passed, and one day, he realized he had changed. Not completely fine. Not free from depression. But for the first time in years, he could breathe without feeling like he was choking. The change didn't come from some magical moment. It came from little things, a simple check-in from an old friend, a short message from his therapist after a tough session. I'm really proud of you today. He slowly came to understand, healing doesn't mean erasing the pain. It means learning how to live with it without falling apart. He didn't need to be strong the way people said, he just needed to be kind to himself. The biggest shift came one morning. The sky wasn't sunny. Nothing special happened. He was just sitting in his tiny kitchen, looking at a steaming cup of coffee, when he thought, I'm still here. No longer wanting to disappear. No longer seeing life as only shades of gray. He began learning how to slow down. Started meditating, just 3 minutes a day at first. Started journaling, nothing fancy, just messy words full of real feelings. He started exercising, not to look good, but to remind his body, you're still alive. He learned how to open up. To his therapist. To friends. Even to strangers on mental health forums. And each time he shared, it felt a little lighter. No shame. No loneliness. Most importantly, he learned how to forgive. His past. The people who didn't understand him. And the version of himself who had survived all those painful years. It wasn't an ending. But it was a real beginning. And for the first time, he wasn't just surviving. He was living because he wanted to. After many years, he began to return to life, this time, not just to act okay, but to truly be present. Everything around him was still the same room, the same street, the same coffee shop where he used to sit alone for hours. But how he felt, it was different. The world no longer felt distant. Instead, he felt himself slowly reconnecting with people, with work, and most importantly, with himself. At first, he only took on small things, writing freelance articles, helping with logistics at a small mental health event. But little by little, he began to regain his confidence. That heavy weight of I'm useless started to lift. He found himself doing things he once thought impossible, going to interviews, speaking in front of groups, reaching out to reconnect with old friends. Even his family began to change. He learned to share his pain instead of hiding it. Sometimes, they would just sit together, no judgment, just listening. And somehow, in that openness, the cracks that once seemed permanent began to heal. And though the depression still returned from time to time, like an unexpected summer rain, he no longer panicked. He realized he now had the tools, the awareness, the strength not to drown in it again. He also came to understand that life doesn't have to be amazing to be worth living. It just needs a little joy, each day. Sunlight through the window. The smell of a familiar meal. A hug at just the right moment. He didn't become someone new. He became a truer version of himself. A man with both scars and light. With both softness and strength. Coming back wasn't about returning to old places. It was about coming home to himself, the self he had once lost. And now, he's found it again. He used to think, if I ever make it through this, I'll stay silent. I'll bury it all in the past and live like none of it ever happened. But then he realized what he had lived through, the journey he had taken, wasn't something to keep hidden. Because there are still so many people out there, lost in the dark, just like he once was. So he began to write. Simple posts online, sharing his journey through depression, not polished, not trying to sound strong. Just honest. And that honesty hit people deeply. Messages started coming in. For the first time, I feel understood. He also started speaking at mental health events, not as an expert, but as someone who had been there, and was still walking the path. He didn't paint a perfect picture or promise easy healing. He simply said, you are not alone. And you deserve a full, meaningful life. His life now still has sad days, still has moments of doubt. But instead of fearing them, he's learned to slow down, to listen to his body, to his mind. He doesn't run anymore. He doesn't force himself to stay positive. He treats himself like a precious friend, sleeping enough, eating well, setting healthy boundaries in his relationships. He's grateful for every day he gets to live, and he knows now, peace, even if fragile, is real. To keep living doesn't mean leaving the past behind. It means carrying what you've learned, what you've endured, and what you've grown through so you can move forward, stronger. He didn't defeat depression. He learned how to live with it gently, bravely, and with deep compassion for himself. And is how he made it through. He is no longer someone that depression can swallow whole. He's someone who has walked through it, with scars, with collapses, with moments where continuing felt impossible. But he's still here. Still living. Not a perfect life, but a real one, full of sorrow, full of joy, full of breath, and full of love. He's come to understand that healing isn't a destination, it's a journey with no final stop. And anyone can begin that journey, whether it's today, in exhaustion, or with the smallest possible step. If you've made it this far in reading, maybe you or someone you love is also lost in the dark. If that's the case, let these words be for you. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are in pain. And you deserve to heal. Reach out for help. Be gentle with yourself. Keep going even if it's just one slow, quiet step. Because there is still hope. And because you deserve to be here.